Hey, sports porchers, it's your hockey Jesus, and I'm back with some first half analysis of the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's right, we finally made it to the halfway point of the NHL season. Boy, seasons go so fast. I'm just astounded that the Pittsburgh Penguins are already halfway through this 2024-2025 season. And boy, what a roller coaster it's been for the Pens. What I hope to do in this analysis is to give you kind of a perspective of where the Pens started the year, where they are now, and what I think is going to happen for the remainder of the season. They're really two paths the Penguins can still go down, and I think they both can diverge very quickly, even before we get to the Four Nations tournament that's going to happen. It's going to give us another little break. Typically, the hockey season breaks down at the midway point. There's usually an NHL All-Star game, but this year they're doing a NHL. They're doing a tourney with the Four Nations, and that's going to be at the beginning, kind of the middle of midway through February, and that's going to be the next break point. So I'm just going to give you my analysis. So where are the Penguins now? The Penguins right now sit at 17-24 on the season with 41 points. That's right. I'm not using the tie because I don't believe in ties. So I'm not going down that route. That means you know that if you watch me, you know that the Pittsburgh Penguins have to get, really any NHL team has to get the 45 wins if they want to have a shot at being in the playoffs, because that's going to include some ties, some overtime loser points, and that sort of thing. So 45 wins is exactly where you need to be considered to be in the race. If you've got 50 wins, you're definitely going to be in the playoffs. You may even win a division, might get one of those first three seeds, probably not going to get a wild card. But that's what the Penguins are looking at right now. There's no way that they can do anything about getting the top 3 points. The Capitals, the Devils, and the Hurricanes pretty much have that locked up. I don't see any way that the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to jump over any of those three teams in the second half. And that's just the way it's going to be. So with that record, that's where the Pens are now. They're still got a terrible plus-minus rating. Their plus-minus rating as we speak today, before they play Columbus tonight, is at a minus 27. Still one of the worst in the NHL. And they really haven't improved upon it much, although they've been able to win some games because they have changed the way their philosophy and the way they're playing the games. They're no longer trying to score way too many goals. They're not trying to play a speed game. They're doing a little nuance of not a trap, but more of a let's not throw everybody to the net because they've given up way too many goals that way. So that's where the Penguins are now. As they stand, they're not in a playoff spot currently. They are behind. They still got to catch the Ottawa Senators, who are in front of them. They're trending with that 41 points, exactly at 82 points for the season. Not going to do it. That's not good enough. They got to be in the 90s if they want to make the playoffs. So they've got some ground to make up in the second half. What did I predict that the Pittsburgh Penguins would do in the first half? I actually predicted they would get 20 wins in the first half. And with the 41 wins, they get 20 and a half wins. Or if you want to say it, you can say 20 wins and 1 loser point. However you want to say it. I don't like the loser point, so I'm going to just use wins. So I wasn't that far off. But however, my analysis was a little bit off in the first half, the first quarter, and then the second quarter of the first half. I thought they'd come out a lot sharper than they did with 11 wins. They only got 8.5 wins in the first quarter, and then I thought maybe 9 wins in the second. They ended up with 12. So I kind of had it backwards, and here's why. I'm going back to the beginning of the season, and if you look at the lines, the Pittsburgh Penguins had Sid, Raquel, and Bolivier on the first line, and I chastised Bolivier. Now remember, Rust was hurt to start the season. Right now they have Rust on that line, and that first line is a smoking hot line. That line is good in any NHL team in the league. Anybody would love to have those three guys on their team. Smoking hot, one of the best lines, the best thing that's happened to the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first half, without a doubt. The second line really hasn't changed that much. Gino been playing with Bunning in the first game, and they had DOC up there playing with him. And Drew O'Connor has had a horrendous start to the first half of his season, a drop back from where he was last year. I think they need to get back to Drew O'Connor. Right now, they're playing Glass up there. And honestly, Glass is not the answer to be playing up there. I think they probably have to put Drew O'Connor back up there. Right now, Drew O'Connor's playing on the third line with Bolivier. He got dropped to the third line, and Haynes is playing that center position. Remember, Tomasino was there. Tomasino's now hurt. He was the glue guy. So probably Hayes is going to have to carry some of the water. Hayes actually was spotted to be on the fourth line. He started on the fourth line with Glass and Achari because Nieto was injured at the beginning of the season. Now that Nieto's been healthy, that fourth line's been pretty much a mainstay of Lizotte, Nieto, and Achari. You know, they play all right. Lizotte's been very good. I have to admit, like, when I said, they got him from the LA Kings for pretty much nothing. And I love his energy. I think he's a great guy. He could actually probably play up. He definitely could play on the second line with Gino. When the Pens were going good, Gino was going good. The first line was going okay, and they were getting adequate enough secondary scoring from the third and fourth lines. They're going to have to get back to that, and the key to that will be having somebody playing with Gino on that second line, and of course, staying injury-free. What else about the first half that was pretty surprising? Well, nothing really too surprising. However, I do have to say, I said at the beginning of the season that nostalgia was going to play a big role, and it absolutely has in the first half. We saw Gino score his 500th goal, get his 1,300th point. We saw Sid get his 1,600th point. We saw Marc-Andre Fleury, formerly of this parish, play his last game in his last trip to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh does play in Minnesota again, so there's a chance they'll get to see him one more time, but it won't be in Pittsburgh. And Sidney Crosby took over the all-time most face-off wins in the NHL. That was not really celebrated as much as his all-time assist leader for the Pittsburgh Penguins. 1,034 assists, past Mario Lemieux, fourth all-time in assists. That was the latest and greatest of the accomplishments that the Pittsburgh Penguins have seen. There were some small things like I think Russ getting his 400th point in his 600th game or something like that. So Russ is starting to creeping up in to the talk of some of the nostalgia. I don't like to talk about nostalgia because I believe that takes away from the talent, but it's part of what the Pittsburgh Penguins are now, being an older team and not really making the playoffs in the past 2 years. Who are the winners and the losers in the first half? Well, there's definitely the biggest loser, in my opinion, was Tristan Jarry. His start to the season was awful. He spent some time down in Wilkes-Barre, and that was really the catalyst for the bad that happened between games 7 and 23 when Jarry was down there. Bloomquist played okay. We know Ned's a backup goalie. He's not going to be a starting goalie in this league ever, but he is a really good backup goalie, and that's what they need to get back to. But in the game 7 through 23, oh boy, where do I even begin? There was a 4-game losing streak in that spot. They actually were trying to get 1 point to only score 52 points on the season. That was a low point against Minnesota in Game 11. Since then, they've bounced back. So they went from 52 points to By the end, by that 23rd game, they were averaging about 70 points a season. Once again, not going to get you in the playoffs, but trending in the right direction. And then from that point until where we are now, the Pittsburgh Penguins have risen again to the point where they're scoring, they're trending towards 82 points on the season. That's good enough to get you nowhere because it's not going to get you a good draft pick. It's going to get you making you feel like you got a chance at the playoffs, but not really. Not really. If you're at 82 points, you're not really going to be in the chance to get to the playoffs. So what the Pittsburgh Penguins have to do is fix their goal differential, which is horrible. Jari's got to be better. Right now, Jari's at 3.47 goals against at an 888 save percentage. If the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to make a run at this in the second half, Jari's got to get his save percentage over 900. It's got to be somewhere between 900 and 910 by the end of the season. And his goal differential has to come down from 3.47 to somewhere between 3.0 and 3.1. That will get them in the race because that will bring the goal differential down. I believe that the Pittsburgh Penguins will continue to score goals. They're not going to light it up. They're not going to be a 7-goal a game. You want to see the Pittsburgh Penguins come out in the second period. I've said this so many times this year. I hope that you can repeat it. But the beginning of the second period is where the Pittsburgh Penguins live and die. When they come out at the beginning of the second period, and they've been giving up a lot of goals in the first period, that doesn't seem to matter to them. But when they come out flat in the second period, they end up losing the game. When they come out blazing guns and they look like they're ready to go in the beginning of the second period and they play a good second period, they're almost always solid enough in the third period to win a game or at least get a loser point if they need to push the pedal to get another goal. So that's really what the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to have to do. And the question is, can they do it? Oh, the other thing that I wanted to talk about before I sign off here is the defensive pairings. The defensive pairings at the beginning of the season were Grzelcyk and Letang. Grzelcyk's been fine. I mean, he's stepped in well. He has he's got enough assists. He doesn't really score a lot of goals, but he's a points getter. I think he's okay. I think he was a good get as a stopgap. Pettersson had a stint there where he was out. He's not looked good lately. He's the rumor of some trades. We'll get to that in a second. And Pettersson's still playing with Carlson on that second line. But the third line pairing has changed considerably. They started off the season with Graves and St. Ivany. You remember him? He actually got sent down, and unfortunately, he got hurt down at Wilkes-Barre, and he's out for a while. He got a pretty serious injury. I think it was a leg injury. So he hasn't been back since then, since he got sent down and since he's got injured. And Graves been disaster again. He was not good last year. He has not looked better this year. He looks better when he plays like every fourth or fifth game. I think that's honestly where he belongs. And with his salary, that's a tough thing. But, however, Owen Pickering has stepped in the beginning of this season. He looks like a total winner. This kid is just stepped right in and has just looked like he belongs out on the ice. He's an absolute great NHL defenseman. He did get a little bit of an injury, but he's back. He only was out for a couple games. And because of all the other injuries and Graves not playing well, the Pittsburgh Penguins did go out and acquire Pierre-Olivier Joseph, POJ for you guys that remember him from last year. They got rid of him in the trade that brought Hayes here in the offseason. And I guess St. Louis wasn't using him well, so they brought him back. He looks like he can be a definite plug-in on that third defensive pair. He's not great. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but he looks better than he did last year when he played with the Penguins. But once again, less of POJ and less of Ryan Graves will be better for this team. But as long as Pickering's in there, and honestly, I think with Pickering playing well, he might be the linchpin on that third line that puts whoever else in there in a good position to succeed. He's been absolute rookie of the year for us. He has been top notch. And remember, at the beginning of the season, Rutger McGroarty started out on that third line with Puljujärvi and Eller. None of those guys are with the team right now. Puljujärvi got sent down. He got in the doghouse. He's probably going to have to come back and maybe play someone on the third line. But with Hayes' contract, they're probably going to play him. He's got a chance at coming back. I saw an interview with Sully where he was saying, look, he wants Puljujärvi to play, but he's got to do things right, which basically means he's got to back check. He's got to play some defense. He didn't like the way Puljujärvi was lounging it on the way with the back check in the defensive zone, and that's why he got benched. It's not because he wasn't scoring. He was definitely doing that, but you can't put him up there with Gino because Gino's an absolute detriment in the back end. Back checks maybe once every 4 shifts. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there that the Penguins can work on. There are 2 tracks that the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to go in, and let me talk about that as we finish up this analysis. Hey, by the way, if you love this, if you love what you're hearing, you think that I got something going on, hit that subscribe button. I do this after almost every Pittsburgh Penguins game. I like to do the analysis. I think, they call me the Hockey Jesus. That's a moniker that the technical director on our sports porch gave me. I love it, actually, because I like to think that I'm giving you guys the truth. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It's an uphill battle for the playoffs, and I'm going to say it like it is. I know that the team thinks that they're a playoff team. A lot of people don't think that. Right now, I don't think they are, but the question is, you burn it down or do you try and make a run at it? Right now, they're only a point away from being in the playoffs, so why not try and make a run at it? But here's what the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to have to do to start the second half for me to be a believer in the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if you're a believer in me, hit that subscribe button, hit a like. I really appreciate it. It helps out the channel, helps out me, and it helps us get more disciples for the game that we love, which is the NHL hockey experience. The Pittsburgh Penguins, first of all, have to win versus Columbus tonight. Columbus is only 1 point behind them. They have to keep Columbus below them. They can't let anybody else jump over them. That means the Blue Jackets. That means the Flyers. The New York Rangers are surprisingly horrid this year after they killed us in the first few games. But we got to keep them below us. And we got to find a way to jump over, some of these other teams like the Ottawas. Got to keep Montreal below us. It's going to be difficult to do, but that you start with winning tonight at Columbus. The Pittsburgh Penguins have a 5-game homestand. This is going to be ultra important for the Pittsburgh Penguins to win 4 of these 5. 8 points is something they're probably going to have to do. I look at the games between now and the Four Nations tournament. There are 15 games between now and then. I think they're going to go 9-6. Honestly, they probably have to go 10-5 or 11-4 because after they get back from the Four Nations tournament, they have an absolute horrendous schedule. They play a lot of very talented teams in the East, and they have shown so far this year that this is definitely something that the Pittsburgh Penguins have not been able to do this year. They have not been able to play with the top-notch talent in the East or really in the West. And that's what the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to have to do if they want to make the playoffs. I personally don't think they're going to, which means they're going to have some tough decisions on what do they do. And the 2 guys that you're going to hear after, right around the Four Nations tournament, which is February. It's after the February 8th game that we play at Philadelphia. That's when the Four Nations tournament ends. You'll be hearing names like Marcus Pettersson being traded, and even that's right, Raquel. He's our top-notch guy. He's our number 1 goal scorer right now. You might hear signs of him going, I think they'll keep him just to make Sid happy and just to have somebody to play with Sid on that first line. The smart move is if they're not going to make the playoffs, to trade both of those guys but this is going to be what the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to have to deal with come the trade deadline. So if they're in a playoff position, if they're trending at 90 points at that point, they might try and buy somebody. Honestly, that's probably the wrong thing to do, but I love to see the Pittsburgh Penguins in the playoffs. Nobody's better in the playoffs than Sidney Crosby. That man is on fire. I hope he can continue his streak here of a point per game. That's probably the other thing I'm looking for in the second half of the season. Can Sid do that? Can the Pittsburgh Penguins remain relevant? I don't know. But if you come back here after every Pittsburgh Penguins game, I will absolutely tell you the truth in the way they are trending. So, Pittsburgh Penguins fans, come on back. Let's see if the Pittsburgh Penguins can get back to the playoffs here in the 2025, end of the 2025 season. We got 41 games to go. So, let's see where they can go. Let's go, Pens. And I'll see you in the next one.